Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Advent Member Talks. My name is Sam. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Director of Member Experience at Advent Coworking. Advent is your local creative co-working community. We have our event wing, podcast studio, yoga studio, art gallery, lots of things, but we really love being a community and supporting all of the amazing work that our members do. And so this weekly event, Advent Member Talks, features a different member on the topic of their choosing. And I'm so excited to have Juan here today, who's going to be asking and sharing, our humans like entrepreneurs, like, are we born to do this thing, or is it something that we come into? So Juan, I know you have what? I see 4 kids, 2 nonprofits, your own consulting firm. You are like the entrepreneur. So I'm excited to hear like what you think on this topic. And for everyone watching, if you have any questions, like this can totally be interactive. So go ahead, type those into the comments, and we can answer those as we go. And then we can do some Q&A at the end as well. So I'll hand it on over to you.
Awesome, Sam. Thank you so much. And as we just said, if you've got any questions at all during this, I certainly like for these conversations to be interactive. So please submit your questions. I'm happy to talk about anything regarding entrepreneurship or any of the work that we're doing at Innovate Charlotte, or anything in my background so that we'll talk about today. So appreciate any of the questions that kind of come through. So when I got the email about selecting a topic for this, there's a lot of different things that we can talk about, but something that is related to the work that I've been doing over the past almost decade, really working in the entrepreneurial support communities. And then before that, as my running my own business as an entrepreneur, it's this idea that I think I've seen almost throughout my entire life. And I firmly believe it because I think it affects the mindset that all of us have and bring to the work that we do. And that could be whether you're a full-time employee, whether you're trying to start a company, whether you're a student, whether you're an artist, whatever. And that is that humans are inherently entrepreneurs. This idea of a career and a job, that's something that was created, and it's something that for most of history did not exist. From the very earliest days, humans find some skills that they specialize in, and they monetize those skills in some way, or they make a living out of those skills. You specialize as a hunter, or you're a gardener, or you're going to be a merchant of some kind. And in most societies throughout history, that is what most people did. It's only until the Industrial Revolution that all of a sudden we had this idea of this hierarchy in large companies where people are on the assembly line, the factory floor, and you've got the foreman, and you've got the sort of the owners, and then the producers. But that isn't really what is natural. And I think that if we remember that, and again, this doesn't mean everybody has to go out and risk everything and start a company, but if we remember that mindset, I think we're all going to be just look at things in a much different way and actually be better employees if that's the route that you take. So one thing I kind of wanted to sort of touch on was, as a kid, I was one of those people that was always sort of trying to figure out how can I make things work. We went through phases. My dad was actually a comic book artist, and so we had some times where he had a lot of work and was sort of doing well, and then sometimes where there wasn't sort of all that much work at the time. So we kind of had these sort of ups and downs throughout my childhood. And we didn't have all the money that some of the other kids had to get whatever the newest pair of shoes or whatever the thing was back then. And so I always sort of had to find ways to kind of come up with that. And some of those creative ways, including these little paper stars that were sort of pretty popular when I was in elementary school. Well, I figured out how to fold them and make them, and some of my classmates didn't. So I started to make these and sell them, and just kind of make my own little business there in elementary school, and would buy boxes of candy bars and sell those at school as well, kind of make a profit there. And this kind of went all the way up through college. I needed money for a new laptop. I needed a new laptop to go to college. And so I actually just ended up getting some discount codes, bought 6 laptops, updated the memory on all of them, and then sold them and made enough money that I was able to sell 5 of them and keep the 6th one free of charge. So just these like little type of ways to make things work. I mean, ultimately it was all just problem solving, right? It's like, how do I look at this problem, find an opportunity, and make that happen? And I realized that this is what a lot of other people do. You just sort of take, what are the assets that I have, and how can I go out there and make a living? I'm a first generation American. My parents both immigrated here from Colombia. And a lot of my family, I have family still in Colombia, South America. And we have other friends sort of in the Latino community. And you realize that there's a lot of entrepreneurship in immigrant communities for that same reason. You might not have the same access to networks and resources that you would otherwise have to find jobs. But if you have a skill, if you identify an opportunity, then you're going to, create that opportunity, do something with that opportunity, and ultimately create a business. And that's why, as a kid, I grew up in upstate New York, and most of my family was in New York City. So we would go into the city, and you would have all these immigrants with their businesses, whether it's just selling salpicon, in Queens, or trying to open up a restaurant or open up a dry cleaner and all of that. That's just the way that you make it. And so, growing up and then through time and all of that, you see that time and time again, that it's almost like the natural state is to be an entrepreneur. It's to say, what resources do I have? How do I maximize this and create opportunity for myself and for my family? And since then, I've been in this world of supporting entrepreneurs. So I have a consulting company, that I started back in 2012, so going on 9 years. And shortly after that, got involved in the entrepreneurial support ecosystem, world of nonprofits and media and support organizations. This started by joining the Pitch Breakfast team first, and then taking that through its 501c3 to become a nonprofit, and started to really kind of grow in this world of entrepreneurial support organizations. A few years after that, launched Start Charlotte, which was a media and events company of sorts that really existed just to support the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in Charlotte. And through this, you start to get into the different accelerator programs and the different frameworks that exist out there, like the business model canvas. And we've taken a lot of what we've seen at Pitch Breakfast, and I've created the Pitch Start method for pitching your startup. All of these frameworks, if you look at that, at co-starters or what the accelerators are teaching, when it comes down to the core elements that make up a business and how to think through a business like an entrepreneur, it really is just basic problem solving. You identify a group of people with a problem, you see if there's monetary potential in that opportunity, you create a product, you create a service, you create a brand that helps to address this need, and you build a business out of it. That kind of problem solving, that's what humans are wired to do. We're all problem solvers. And whether you think you're engineering minded, or whether you think you're entrepreneurial or business minded, or whether you think you're more artistic, we take the world around us, we look at problems, we look at situations, and we create solutions. And those solutions might be more artistic, right? More addressing emotional needs of a community, telling stories. It might be more practical, right? I'm solving this problem and I've invented this widget to solve this problem. And it could be service oriented, it could be whatever. But that is what it means to be human. It's to solve problems. I think, over the past 100+ years, right, since the Industrial Revolution, this idea of being an employee, of just being, a cog in a wheel, and and obviously lots of businesses and lots of roles nowadays aren't quite that the way they are in some industries, but it still has this ability to take away that sense of agency when you think of yourself as just, this is the role, this is the job that I'm doing, right? And whether you come out of college thinking this is the job I want to have, or if you're in a business now and you see yourself in the lens of the corporate hierarchy and the office politics and all of that, I think that's actually very sort of dehumanizing. And some people find success in that, and that's great. But what I think makes a good employee, a better employee, is those that have that, let's call it entrepreneurial mindset, where yes, I have a paycheck. Yes, I report 9 to 5 to this employer, but they don't own me, right? I'm not a cog in a wheel. Rather, I am a consultant that has one client, right? My boss, and they provide me, these parameters that I work in. But as a consultant, I am my own business, and I need to figure out, what does my client need, right? The employer. How can I best solve these problems, and how can I bring my resources to bear to solve these problems? I think as an employee, if you look at yourself as being self-employed, as being a consultant, you look at the way you approach your work differently. You look at it as a business owner, and you understand the basics of, your client has a need. Who is the competition? What are the services that you're offering? What do they value out of the work that you do? And if you embrace that attitude, if you embrace that approach, you're going to be a more valued employee, especially if you're in a small business and you're reporting to an owner. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and that's what they want, right? They want an employee who takes ownership for whatever that area is, right? Maybe I hired you for social media, but you treat this like you are a business owner, and your business is communication, social media, and marketing for this particular business. So yeah, I think it's a lot about a mindset, and I think it is helpful and extremely important for everybody to understand that and adopt that mindset. So many of the problems that we have, in the world are people who complain and create these problems and don't have empathy for others, because they're sort of myopically looking at what's in front of them. Whereas entrepreneurs in general tend to be optimistic. They tend to look at problems and identify opportunities where others will just complain. And they tend to understand, how the relationship that their business has with supporting organizations, with their customers, with their employees, you just tend to have this holistic mindset. And it's why I've given talks at different universities, and I always encourage people, especially if you're young and you have that ability to take some risk, start a business, launch a startup. It might fail, sure, but you're going to learn that mindset, and you're going to learn a lot about you. And in my opinion, you're going to tap into that core of humanity, which is essentially entrepreneurship. So anyway, those are just some of the thoughts that I had, and wanted to share those. But I would love to answer any questions or anything else that you'd like to dig into.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's so cool, that history of like family entrepreneurship, when my great grandparents, came to the US, they also, opened like it wasn't a gas station, but like a little neighborhood shop, a bakery. My grandpa had his own like dentist practice, like stuff like that. So it's like really cool to see that in a family. And like, I'd love to know more about like folks watching, like how, your family has influenced you into entrepreneurship. I did have a question come in here, message to us. So as an entrepreneur, you are responsible for every aspect of your business. If you are not yet at the point of hiring employees, is there a way to handle your workload sustainable without turning down opportunities to grow?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Oh, sure. So just if you're not at a point yet to be able to hire employees, is there a way to handle that, your workload sustainably without turning down opportunities to grow in your business?
Yeah. If you are a consultant, or if you have a service business and you have opportunities, but you don't feel like you have the bandwidth to do that, having a good network of other people that can help your clients is pretty important, and is always helpful too. And honestly, if you're looking out for your clients like that, hopefully they remember that, and you're able to say, look, I'd love to take this on. I'm kind of full up right now, but I have a colleague here who may be a better fit, or who's available right now, or something like that. So, you should know other people that do what you do, and you're going to find opportunities to collaborate. You're going to find opportunities where, hey, this came across my desk. I could do it, but I think you would be a better fit, right? Maybe they're a services business, and I typically work with product businesses, and I could do this, but you know what? I think you might be a better fit. And some of those interactions end up coming back to you. People end up trusting you. That partner may end up partnering on other things. They may send you business, or you may find an opportunity to work together. So there are other ways of doing that, but keeping in mind other people who do what you do, or prospective consultants and partners, is also important. I always have to have freelance writers on hand, like constantly. I'm always looking for freelance writers, because there's always going to be projects where I need something and somebody's not available, or maybe they're not as familiar with that industry. And so I can bring somebody on for just a project. I don't have to hire them on as a full-time employee. And, it's just helpful to have that in your stable.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to refer that business. I mean, that's totally what community is all about, is not only helping your own business expand, but by helping others expand as well. And that will totally come back to benefit the work that you're doing through those partnerships. So Shamila just commented a question here. How do you decide on which projects to pursue if they're all important to you?
Oh, wow. It's a tough one. I'd love to give a wise answer to that, but I have so many projects on my plate right now. I always joke around. You guys ever seen those people who will take plates and spin them on a stick, and they'll spin one and then spin the other? That's what I feel like I'm doing. It's like I spin a plate, make sure it's spinning, and then I run over here and I spin this plate. So it's very much a story of my life. But there is a book that I read, and I have it here somewhere. I think it's called Body of Work by Pamela Slim. And it talks about how you can take, if you're a multi-passionate, right, you've got multi-skills, you've got lots of different projects, is to try to find that common thread, right? That one thing that starts to tie it all together, and then use that as a way to sort of envision where it is that you want to go. And ultimately, you are going to get to a point, and I've been at this point multiple times in my life, you get to a point where you have to choose. And you have to choose a path. You might have multiple paths in front of you, and you have to choose a path. And you do that while figuring out how the other work that you do is in service to that path. So an example, I was just talking to an entrepreneur from the Caribbean. She does these environmental waste management education workshops, and she's written some books, and she does some consulting. And she's trying to figure out how to manage her business. And what we ended up realizing is she's talking about three completely different businesses. The consulting is for large, huge multinational corporations. Her courses are for business professionals, and her books are for children and young families. And it's like, okay, you got to choose a path. You can still do consulting, you can still do the books, but how can you work this so that it's in service for the business that you want to build? Or maybe if you want to be a consultant, how can the other two, work in service of this one? So yeah, you are eventually going to have to, make a choice, but can you do it in a way that the other projects that you have work in service to that one? That would be what I'd recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. It can be really hard to choose what that focus is. I know what, has helped me in the past is looking at, well, who's already doing this thing? I'm really passionate about, X, who's already doing that work? Does it make sense for me to start a project in that, or can I support that project while holding this main body of work elsewhere? So definitely hard to choose that. Another question we got messaged: is there a particular personality type or like demographic group that are more likely to become entrepreneurs?
Um, a lot of the entrepreneurs that you see at networking events and you see presenting and getting awards, they do tend to be a little bit more A-type personality, sort of that driven, extroverted sort. That doesn't mean that most entrepreneurs are, and it doesn't mean that the most successful entrepreneurs are. It just means that the most visible entrepreneurs are. I know plenty of other entrepreneurs that are not very comfortable going to networking events or getting up on stage and speaking, highly, highly successful. They themselves are not, alpha type extroverts. Rather, they are the type that they see a problem and they hire people who are better at them at the different tasks that it takes to do the business. And that's how you grow. And frankly, sometimes entrepreneurs like that end up being more successful than the super alpha types, because the alpha types might find themselves in a situation where they try to do everything, right? They think that they're the best person at selling. So yeah, they might hire a salesperson, but they're the best person at selling. And they might be the best person at this, and they might be the best person at that. Whereas successful entrepreneurs, they recognize where their weaknesses are. And you hire or you partner for those weaknesses. So the sooner you can offload some of the work that you do, or let me rephrase that, the sooner you find out what your best use is, if your best contribution to your business is strategy, then let someone else do production. If your best contribution is selling, great, go do that. Let someone else handle the finances. So figuring out what your highest and best use is within your business is the number one skill set that you should have as a successful entrepreneur. That doesn't require a specific personality type. I know entrepreneurs of all personality types.
Yes. How many personality types have you have you taken? So since you've worked with so many entrepreneurs, are you able to tell when meeting someone if they'll actually be able to handle, entrepreneurship for the long haul?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly run across the people who you do kind of wonder, like, I don't know if this one's going to make it. And others that, you're like, I've got a good feeling about them. And I think they're going to go far. Back when Start Charlotte had just started, we had our very first awards event. It was called Start Charlotte Live. And at the very first one, we had an award that we gave out that was Startup of the Year. And it was given to an early stage company that we thought was going to be successful, in the years to come. And, I'll give you one example just to kind of call them out. It was only a few months before we had our first Start Charlotte Live event that we had these two entrepreneurs that were reaching out. And I tell you, they texted, reached out on LinkedIn, reached out via Facebook, and emailed. And I'm like, wow, these guys really, really sort of wanted me. Two young college kids from Wake Forest. And I talked to a couple other people, in the community, and they were like, hey, yeah, have you heard from, these guys, Alex and Dan? And it's like, yeah, wow, like they just made a huge splash. And pretty early on, we could tell like they've got the drive, but also the coachability, right? I don't have all the answers kind of a thing, but rather I'm going to work my butt off, but I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn. And I understand I'm going to make mistakes. Like when you have that combination, you're like, all right, they're going to go places. And so we awarded the Startup of the Year to 2U Laundry. And this was months after they had just arrived to Charlotte and were getting off the ground. And sure enough, they went on to go into Techstars and raise millions of dollars in capital. And now it's a large company, right? The vans are all over the place. That's one that I think a lot of us in the entrepreneurial community would have said, we see something that's going to work there. So, I don't know that we're batting 100, but or 1,000, whatever the expression is. But a lot of times you can tell.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest blocks to entrepreneurship maybe like specifically to Charlotte, what keeps folks from being able to pursue those passions or be successful in their own business?
Sorry, say the first part of the question again.
What are the biggest blocks for folks to entrepreneurship?
To becoming an entrepreneur or to being successful as an entrepreneur?
Yes.
To becoming an entrepreneur, it's simply a mindset thing. I wish entrepreneurship was taught in middle school so that kids can go into high school and with this idea of I'm going to be an entrepreneur. You don't hear that a whole lot, and you certainly hear it more now than you did when I was in middle school. Nobody talked about that, right? The term startup didn't exist. Mark Zuckerberg was still going to Harvard. This whole idea of raising millions in a hoodie, like that wasn't around, and entrepreneurship wasn't really talked about quite the same way. And there's this mindset that if you're going to college, you're going to pursue a career in, law or become a doctor or, do this. Now we're starting to see more universities with innovation and entrepreneurship programs, which is great. But I just don't think it's something that people think about early on because it's not part of our language. So yeah, if it was up to me, we would teach entrepreneurship 101 in middle school and give kids the idea that this is a viable alternative. And some people say that it's risky, and I've got my own thoughts on policies and laws and all of that affect the risk factor for entrepreneurship. But what I always say as a consultant is I think having one full-time job is riskier because all of your income comes from one source. Whereas as a consultant, I have multiple clients. I've got some longtime clients and some bigger clients, some smaller clients. If I lose one of them, I lose a percentage of my income, and that sucks. And I got to go replace that. But I don't lose 100% of my income. So that applies maybe a little bit more to service businesses. But I actually see that as less risky than just one job and 100% of your income coming from one source. So I think some of those ideas keep people from becoming entrepreneurs. And then as far as being successful, there's a lot of reasons why businesses fail. I would say that to me, the number one reason is they build something that people don't want to buy. It's not enough customer discovery. It's not understanding your customer. You as an entrepreneur fall in love with your product and you say, this is amazing. If you can't see this, you're an idiot, and that doesn't work that way. You have to learn how to look at things through the eyes of your customer. That's what makes you successful. And that's hard for some entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. I totally support teaching that to kids in school. I remember when I was in school, like middle school and high school, I wanted to have my own bookstore, like a used bookstore. I think I got told that books would not be a thing by the time I could actually start a business. But I definitely didn't have someone in my life who, kind of was experienced in that entrepreneurship who could then provide that feedback of okay, but what else?
Right.
What are the other options? So yeah, I think that would be really great to talk to folks more about those different options and teach those technical skills and actual life skills in school. But yeah, well, thank you so much for your time today. If folks want to learn more about the work that you do or reach out, what's the best way for them to do so?
Sure. You can learn more about the nonprofit organization. So Innovate Charlotte, our website is inclt.org. And if you are an entrepreneur and you want to learn more about our mentorship program, our co-starters education program, or you just want to get some help through our navigator program to get connected to other resources in the community, we're happy to do that. Just go to the website and reach out. And then Pitch Breakfast, we hold an event every month, second Wednesday of every month, and you can learn more about that event. And you get to watch, it's a free event, and you get to watch entrepreneurs pitch and get some expert feedback on those pitches. You can learn more about that at pitchbreakfast.com.
Awesome. I just dropped those into the comments as well. Well, thank you again. And thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today and everyone watching this later on our YouTube channel, Advent Coworking. This is our weekly event, Advent Member Talks, every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Now, I have to announce we are taking a break in the month of July. We are figuring out how we're going to come back live in person and simultaneously stay here virtually with you. So if you have any ideas on that, please hit me up. You can reach me at info@adventcoworking.com or message us on any of our socials. But yeah, so we will be back in full swing in person and virtual come August. So if you're a member, Shmila, we have to get you signed up for your Advent member talk. You're here watching all of them. I love it. Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much, y'all. I hope you all have a great evening.
Awesome. Thanks.